Good morning, students. Today, I think, we would be looking at the last part of the chapter. We have already seen most of how the caste and class was evolved around the early society of India, and how the whole story has been woven around Mahabharat, because Mahabharat has everything. It has the dominance of the upper caste, it has the poor position of the lower caste, it also has the poverty of the upper caste, like in form of the extreme poverty which Dronacharya was subjected to at the early career of his life. And there are palace intrigues, then there are the, the rivalry between different brothers. So all of that is there, and that is the reason why Mahabharata is considered to be the ideal platform around which the whole story has been woven. So, coming straight away to this, what we start today. Today, we will be looking at the end of this essentially, and let's look at this paragraph. Consider another instance. One of the most challenging episodes in Mahabharata is Draupadi's marriage with the Pandavas, an instance of polyandry that is central to the narrative. That is, one woman and more than one husband. And if we examine the section of the epic that describes this event, it is evident that the authors or the author attempted to explain it in a variety of ways. Unlike things like for example, Arjun's kind of display of his dominance of archery when he was actually there to attend the Swayamvara of Draupadi. There, everyone is equal. That is how it happened. But the moment it came to how Draupadi ended up becoming the wife of all the five brothers, then there are different kind of, there are tweaking of words and certain omission of words and certain commission of words, and that's how it has happened. So some historians suggest the fact that the authors described a polyandrous union indicates that polyandry may have been prevalent among ruling elite at some point in time. At the same time, the fact that so many different explanations are offered also suggests that the polyandry gradually fell into disfavor among the Brahmins, who reworked and developed the text through the centuries. So, students, that's how it happens. If you're very clear about something, if you're proud of it, then you say, yes, this is I did, this is what I did, and this is how it was done. But then if you're very ashamed of it, or if you're very embarrassed by something, and if you're and almost like apologetic about something, then you have this this is what happened and that is what happened, that kind of version emerges. And we are talking about exactly the same thing. The polyandry thing was definitely not seen. Maybe it existed at some point in time in the ruling elite, but then it was definitely not something to be proud of. Okay. Not that the society was very boastful about it, one woman having probably more than one husband. So that is why Brahmins through centuries tried, and the lawmakers through the centuries have tried to rework this part of Mahabharat. And through Mahabharat, they are essentially saying that it might have prevailed even within the normal society, that is, of course, among the ruling elite, not among the poor and the farmers or the middle class for that matter, but the ruling elite, whereby it might have had happened for whatever reasons of convenience, but then gradually, even within the society, it did not get any kind of acceptance like the normal marriages did. And there would be a lot of a headache as to be who's which father is the biological father of which child and all of that, because woman happens to be one. So there would be a lot of permutation and combination to worry about. So that is the reason why it never got acceptance and respectability. So some historians note that while the practice may have seemed unusual or even undesirable from the Brahminical point of view, it was and is prevalent in the Himalayan region. Yes, that is also true. Now, students, you have to understand that this is not a question of unusual or undesirable from the Brahminical point of view. Guys, you're class 12 students. That's why I always emphasize this point. Now, forget about Brahminical version. Do you think this is a practice which is there even in America, or or for that matter in Japan or in Russia or any Christian, any country of Christianity for that matter, or any Buddhist country for that matter, where a woman would be having three or four or five husbands. Very rarely so, it might be in certain tribal areas possible, of course, but then not in the general. Just pick up any part of the planet, pick up any civilization on the planet, and you would find that in 98% of the population is not conforming to, probably even 99% of the population has would find it extremely undesirable and extremely unusual and definitely not acceptable. So it is not always about the Brahminical version and the Brahminical point of view. No, even today in modern societies it doesn't happen that way, right? So, of course, even today, if you go to certain areas of Himalayan areas, that is the tribal areas, even in northeastern India, you would find instances, especially also in Ladakh, you would find a woman might have, and among in the areas of Tibet, you would find a woman having more than one husband. But then that these are very, very tribal areas and very, very typical of them, or very particular to them, but not in the general population. Clearly not. Then dynamic text, the growth of Mahabharata did not stop with the Sanskrit version, just like Ramayana for that matter before it, right? Because Ramayana had many, many versions. Over the centuries, versions of the epic were written in a variety of languages through an ongoing process of dialogue between people, communities, and those who wrote the texts. Several stories that originated in the specific regions or circulated among certain people found their way into the epic. At the same time, the central story of the epic was often retold in different ways. All episodes were depicted in sculpture and painting. They also provided themes for wide ranging of performing arts, plays, dance, and other kinds of narrations. Since this could have been elaborated a dynamic text, but then I think, they have been very crisp and very short about it. Yes, that's all there is. Uh, Guys, Mahabharata is actually a very, very dynamic text, and it is as dynamic and exactly like Ramayana for that matter. Okay, because Ramayana, again, those written before. Ramayana happened much before Mahabharata did in actual life. But the point is, you have to understand that, because they've had such profound, such important, such wide-ranging effect on the culture and the administrative setup and the social life of the whole Indian subcontinent, that even when Muslims started ruling in India, they also translated Mahabharat and Ramayana in Urdu to suit their own tastes, because they also wanted to reflect on this, whatever this was about, and they also wanted to pick up certain facets for their own respective societies. So, now coming to, and now since Mahabharat would be written in some language which many in South India would find it difficult to understand, or in eastern part of the country difficult to understand. So naturally, and it was the same story with Ramayana for that matter, and that is the reason why they came up with different translations, so that it was easy for the population from different regions of India and the Indian subcontinent essentially to understand. It was the same thing with Ramayana and here, but I would not tell you about the Ramayana thing, but definitely when it comes to Mahabharat, for example, they were it was written in Odia. It has been written in Odia. It has been written in Bengali, in Malayali, in Tamil, all the different languages. Please, in all the different languages, and very, very interestingly, they more or less talk about the Kauravas and the Pandavas and everything together. But also at the same time, if you look at the Odia Mahabharata, it does not have anything on Bhagavad Gita at all. Yes, that's very interesting, because Odia Mahabharata does not have Bhagavad Gita. It completely skips Bhagavad Gita. It's the moment the battle starts at Kurukshetra, it goes on, right? And similar fashion, very interestingly, if you look at the Yes, the Malayali Mahabharata, then it has been very interestingly, uh, there a parrot is actually narrating the story. एक तोता पूरी कहानी कहता है, right, in Malayali Mahabharata, right? So then if you look at Kannada Mahabharata, right, Kannada and Telugu, you have to understand, students, if you remember, that's at the later point in life, now kind of going a bit of doing a bit of rewind. If you understand that in a later point of life, Chandragupta Maurya converted himself into Jainism. He adopted the Jaina faith, right? Now that is something which needs to be understood, that it gives you an idea about that, especially in the areas now around which today are Karnataka um, and Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. These were strongholds of Jain religion. In fact, if you go to Karnataka, you have one of the world's largest statues of Bahubali, at Shravanabelagola, who happens to be a Jain monk. So that is the reason why the Malayali Mahabharat and the Telugu Mahabharat, they actually have a huge amount of Jain influence in them. Okay, they have a huge amount of Jain influence in them, and which is very, very unlikely the original Mahabharat of Maharishi Vedyas. In a similar fashion, the Mahabharat, which has been written by the Bhils. Now, Bhil happen to be a very prominent tribe in central India, that is around Madhya Pradesh. Okay, now in their Mahabharat, okay, which they had come up with, and guys, you have to understand, all these Mahabharats have been I'm talking about the old ones, the genuine ones, the first ones. They all have been written between 12th and 15th century. Okay, now the Bhil Mahabharat gives a great amount of prominence to the role of Draupadi. Okay, now because that also is a reflection of the fact that Bhil society happens to be a very woman dominated society, and that's exactly the reason why you would see that a huge amount of all the Pandavas are always listening to Draupadi, and she is very, very instrumental in inspiring and motivating them all the time. So guys, that is what we are talking about. Different versions are actually a manifestation and reflection of what the kind of society they are living and what the message that they would like to communicate to their own respective set of people. Okay, thanks.